Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really honored to partake in this webinar, and hurricane preparedness is really near and dear to my heart. It's something that I take seriously as a broadcast meteorologist with a degree in meteorology from Penn State. I know the fury of Mother Nature. I've seen what Mother Nature can do, and I feel that everybody needs to be better prepared because we all tell people what to do, but how many people actually do it themselves? And we're going to focus on hurricane preparedness today and what you should be doing personally, as a family, and with your business as well. So as I mentioned, I'm a meteorologist, TV host, and natural disaster preparedness expert. I have over 15 years of experience, and I'm delighted to share everything with you today. How's that for setting the mood? So I wanted to start with that video basically to remind you that hurricane season runs June 1st through November 30th, and hurricanes are intense. They are dangerous. We saw that in 2017 with Maria and Irma, Harvey and Nate, the four names that were retired. And we are all vulnerable. It only takes one. And I really want everybody to focus on a few different things. And I'm going to start with breaking it up into unit one here with knowing your risk. So know where you live, know what you are vulnerable to. Do you live along the coastline? Even if you don't, are you at risk of inland flooding? So hurricanes don't just bring wind and rain. They have storm surge, flooding, coastal erosion, landslides, and yes, tornadoes. And that's one thing I think people really don't think about, because when you're sheltering sometimes from a hurricane, you might be in a big building that you think may be safe, but then if a tornado warning is issued for your area, all of a sudden you have 300 people in a big gymnasium, and I don't think that's the safest place to be if a tornado were to come upon your building, because tornadoes obviously could have much stronger winds in a much smaller scale. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Storm surge, we know, is the biggest killer from tropical cyclones, and that can really sneak up on people. So if you do live in an area where you are prone to that, if you are in a flood zone, know in advance where you will go, because you're not going to want to stay. If you flood easily just from tidal flooding, from nor'easters, or a simple change in wind direction, you got to keep that in mind. And even if you're not in a flood zone, consider where you live. What is your neighborhood like when you get heavy rains? If it's like a Hurricane Harvey, for example, if you get 20 inches of rain, yeah, you might not be in a flood zone, but your yard is going to be flooded, and maybe your house will too. So my tip is, if you can, buy flood insurance, but remember there is a 30-day wait period for the activation of the flood insurance. So you don't want to wait until you see a hurricane lurking or a tropical storm off the coast and then buy one, because that will be too late. Just keep that in mind. Hurricanes, as many of you know, we classify with the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. And so even a category 1 can be very dangerous. You look at what Hurricane Sandy did, for example, up across New England. So even if it's a 1, you don't really want to focus on just the number. Focus on the impacts. How big is the storm? What angle is the storm striking land at? How fast or slow is the storm moving? Hurricane Harvey was obviously a very slow mover, and that one, even as a tropical storm, dropped ridiculous amounts of rain. So yes, there's the categories 1 all the way up to category 5, and if you get a 4 or a 5, everything is going to be catastrophic. Look what happened in Puerto Rico. I mean, that island is still trying to recover. And that could happen anywhere along the coast of the United States as well. So just other things to keep in mind. Hurricane threats, we mentioned storm surge. That's going to be your biggest killer. It sneaks up on people. Inland flooding as well is a problem. So again, just because you're not on the coast, you could get very heavy rains. That's going to be an issue. Notice the wind is only 8%. So most of it is going to come from the water. And then you have other things like the surf and tornadoes, but that storm surge, that's one thing that you really need to focus on. And then some other things, you have the beach erosion, the heavy surf. Don't forget about severe thunderstorms, tornado warnings, rip currents too. Many people don't think about rip currents because you might think the hurricane is offshore and it'll be fun to go surfing, and you have to realize those rip currents are going to be really strong and they can pull people out. Even the strongest swimmers can get caught up in rip currents. So U.S. hurricane landfalls in the Atlantic Basin. So we're looking at landfalls from 1900 to 2010. And I want you to focus on the colors here because that's showing how many landfalls we have. So obviously your eyes are probably drawn to the red. That's across southern Florida, the Florida Keys, just from geography. I mean, they stick out, they're there. You have the Miami area. Also focus on the yellows and oranges. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, they jut out. Also, as you go down to portions of eastern Florida, so you go Miami to Fort Lauderdale, up the coast as well, over to New Orleans, as we know from Katrina, really much of the Gulf Coast, and then over toward Texas, over toward the Houston area too. So those are going to be your areas that are most vulnerable. However, just because you're not in a yellow, orange, or red area does not mean you will not get a strike. In fact, if you look at this map, I don't see any gaps here. So just about all of that coastal real estate has had a hurricane strike. And it's a little scary too, especially if you look at areas that have not had a direct hit in a while, like Virginia Beach or up near New England, down toward the Tampa area. These are all very vulnerable areas to coastal flooding and other types of hazards like storm surge. So that's one thing that I kind of wanted to put out there, saying we are all at risk and it only takes one. Here's some major hurricanes that made landfall in the US from 1950 to 2016. And they are, concentrated. The Outer Banks jumps out at you. South Florida jumps out at you. So yes, if you live in those areas, you are certainly more vulnerable. Panhandle of Florida, the western edge over toward New Orleans, and then parts of eastern Texas as well. Lots of gaps though. Virginia Beach, up toward Delaware, New Jersey, even up toward Massachusetts, southern Maine, haven't had a major landfall in a long time. And as we always say, it's only a matter of time before it happens again. It's just a matter of when. Will it be this year? Will it be 10 years from now? Will it be 100 years from now? Nobody knows, but boy, I gotta say, if it strikes and it is within our lifetimes, we want to be prepared for that. Because one storm and that can take out a lot. And we want to make sure we do everything we can to protect our lives and protect our property. 2017 hurricane season. I love these maps because it really shows where everything formed and where it went. And the ones that stick out in everybody's minds, of course, are Irma, you have Maria, Harvey, and Nate. Not a whole lot of action, though, on the East Coast, really from Georgia up north to Maine. We had some scares off the coast, but they stayed offshore. And then the Gulf of Mexico was pretty active in 2017. The Caribbean was active too. And it'll be interesting to see what 2018 brings. And I'll have the forecast here in just a minute. So the World Meteorological Organization, they look at the hurricane season each year, and storms that were particularly costly or deadly, they retire those names. So they're not going to be used again. This year, it was Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate from 2017. The new names, there you go. I'm not even going to try to pronounce them. I believe they have the pronunciations on the website. And so those are going to be the new names. They like to use international names also because of the Spanish and French influences in the Caribbean too. And the names are rotated every 6 years. The names come back again unless those names are retired. So we can say good riddance to Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate. Here are the 2018 hurricane names, starting with Alberto. And it goes down the list there all the way to William. So if your name is on that list, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some people like to be called a hurricane. So there you go. You got some popular names there like Chris, and you have Sarah. So those are pretty popular. And then your 2019 names are up on the screen as well, from Andrea all the way down to Wendy. All right, so the 2018 hurricane season. The Colorado State University meteorologists, they do a lot of research on the tropics, and they put out the first forecast every season for what they think is going to happen in the tropics. So based on their research, they are saying this could be favorable for yet another above average season. So this is due to the absence of El Nino and perhaps a weak El Nino becoming neutral. And I'll explain more of that in a second. But the average number of named storms in a season is 12. In 2017, it was busy at 17. This year, they're forecasting 14. Hurricanes average is 6, forecasting 7. Major hurricanes average is 2, and they are forecasting 3. Now, I will say this is as of mid-April, and the Colorado State University meteorologists do update their forecasts throughout hurricane season and as we get closer to it too. So these numbers could be tweaked a little bit. We talked about El Nino. El Nino actually hinders Atlantic hurricanes. So if you don't want an active season, we like El Nino. Doesn't look like that's happening though. Basically what happens is you have a strong jet stream creating unfavorable winds, and that tears off the tops of thunderstorms and makes it very difficult for any tropical activity to form and stay formed and really get going. So 2015 was a quiet season because of this. So that's El Nino. La Nina and neutral hurricane influences, they're a little different. So with a typical La Nina, you have weaker vertical wind shear and trade winds and less atmospheric stability. So things are a little bit more unstable. You don't have those strong jet stream winds to tear off the tops of storms. So that creates an environment along with the warmer waters to allow these storms to form. And we are thinking that's what we're going to be in, either a La Nina or a neutral season. And it really doesn't have much of a difference, because I want you to focus on the number of lines in this page here. So first, look at El Nino, and these are Gulf category 3 to 5 hurricanes. During an El Nino season, 1925 to 2005, not nearly as many storms as you see in a neutral season or a La Nina. So El Nino, that's why typically those are quieter, and then in a neutral in La Nina, you have a lot of activity. And that's why they are thinking this year could be another above average season. That wraps up Unit 1. Unit 2, we're going to talk about preparing and the truth about preparedness and what Americans really think. And if any of you used to watch Friends, that's where I grabbed this from. I just thought it's funny because this is really astonishing to me. Only 39% of Americans have a family communicated disaster plan. And I mean, really, everybody should. It's something simple. You talk about it. You have a plan. You have a meeting place. But only 39% of people actually talk about it. And that's from a FEMA survey from 2012. So why isn't society better prepared? Well, some possible explanations, and perhaps you fall into some of these categories. You're too busy. Everybody is running around. We just don't have time to think about it. Maybe we can't afford it, especially some of the Other island nations and the people who are less fortunate, they just can't afford to have solid infrastructure or have disaster kits. And that's where organizations like the Red Cross and Salvation Army can really come in handy to help people out, to bring that community together, to educate them. So if they cannot afford to prepare, if a storm is on the doorstep, they know where to go so they can be safe. They don't think a tornado or a hurricane will affect their community. They think, oh, I've lived here 50 years. I've never had a direct hit. We're fine. In fact, I asked a business owner on the Virginia Beach oceanfront, right there on the water. He owns a restaurant hotel with glass windows. And I said, are you worried about tropical storms or hurricanes? He goes, nah, we haven't had a direct hit here in a long time. And if we did, it would only be a tropical storm anyway, so I'm not worried about it. I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, that's not a good attitude to have because it only takes one and there you go. But it saddens me that people actually have that mentality. Maybe some people don't receive tornado warning notifications or they don't take them seriously. How many times have we cried wolf, so to speak, where we get a warning and nothing happens and we think, it's not going to happen this time. But what about when it does happen that one time and you don't go to your safe room? Some people don't know what a tornado warning means. They don't know the difference between a watch or a warning. A watch means be alert, be prepared. Conditions are favorable for the development of tornadoes. And a warning means take action immediately, get to your safe room. They don't know where to go during a tornado warning, or they'd rather watch and stand by the windows. No, if you have a basement, obviously go there and go to the lowest level of your floor in an interior room. Same thing goes for hurricanes. They don't take them seriously, or these other possible explanations. So what I did is I put my community to the test. I wanted to find out how prepared they think they are for a tornado or hurricane. And I went out to a local farmer's market, and I think you'll be pretty amused at what you see. I don't know if it's amused or saddened, but here's a video I want to show you guys.
Tell me the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. A watch is when there is tornado watch is one of them for once it's spotted, right? I think the tornado watch is, I don't know, it's more imminent than the warning. Is that not right? Is it the other way around? Tell me 3 items you should have in your preparedness kit. Water. Okay. Water? Water and bullets. That's pretty much what you need. Does your family have a family meeting place if you were all to get separated? No. No. Do you have flood insurance? Why? I'm not really sure why. We just don't need it. I don't even know if I have flood insurance or not, but I'm on high ground, so I'll probably have to. No, not quite in the flood zone. Up in the valley a little bit, and all the water goes like to my house.
I think that if they don't have a plan, I'd encourage them to have a plan for it. But if they do have a plan, then I'd say, great job. You're definitely going to be thankful when a disaster does strike. You better be ready for a hurricane or a tornado, because those do happen, and it's not like some made-up fairy tale like somebody kisses a frog and then turns into a prince.
Human nature is fascinating.
I've talked to people who think, well, I've lived here for 50 years, nothing's ever happened, so I don't think I have a problem here. I've also talked to people who say, I was hit last year, so I figure that's not going to happen for a while. And we latch on to whatever piece of information we can to convince ourselves we don't have a hurricane coming. One thing that I try to get across to people is how I go about handling it. Instead of telling them what to do, share with folks how I handle the fact that I've got a hurricane problem where I live. And do you know why I take it seriously to prepare for every hurricane season, even if the chances of my house being hit this year are relatively small? It's because the consequences are too high if I don't prepare ahead of time. I have a wife, I have a son, I have a home, I've got other friends and family members in different parts of hurricane-prone areas of this country, and I've decided that the consequences of all of us not preparing are just too high.
All right, so what do you guys think of that? Interesting, right? So that was Dr. Rick Knapp at the end, the former director of the National Hurricane Center. He is now with the Weather Channel. But it's interesting to hear people's different perspectives, and also interesting to hear what people don't know. When I asked, what should you have in your kit, people could only think of water, guns, and bullets. So we still have a lot of educating to do. And I think that video just goes to prove it. And it's amazing what the little kids know. That little girl was absolutely adorable, and she knew more than most of the adults I spoke with. Puts things in perspective. So we have to get the word out there. We have to communicate, and FEMA and Prepareathon and also NOAA's Weather Ready Nation are doing a good job at doing this. And Prepareathon, if you have not heard of it, it's a nationwide community-based campaign for action to increase emergency preparedness and resilience through hazard-specific drills, group discussions, and exercises. A lot of these are going on across the country. I would encourage you to take part in them, or maybe even plan your own, and just to get people up to speed. And so when they are asked, what do you have in your kit? They don't just give you a blank stare. And since 2013, millions of people have actually participated and practiced in these events through Prepareathon. So some people are getting the message, others we still need to inform them. So what are some solutions? What can we do right now? I think you have to make it fun, make it a family activity. If you have kids, talk to them, plan out where you would go, have an out-of-town contact who you would call, and build a disaster kit. Have a kit for every person in the family. Ask yourself if you have a NOAA weather radio. A lot of us don't anymore, and we rely on our cell phones. And that might be okay, but I will tell you, I've been in the grocery store before when a tornado warning has come through. Some providers sent out that warning. It actually went through, and some did not. So people, for example, who had AT&T maybe got the warning, and then if I had Verizon, my phone didn't go off. And it's kind of scary to think that, because everybody relies on the phones and you think they're going to tell you, but you cannot always rely on technology, especially after a disaster. Cell phones may not work, and you may need that weather radio to get that information. So I have both. I make sure my weather radio is always ready to go and it's on alert, so I get those warnings when I need them. They also have portable ones too, which are great if you're going to be out on a boat or out on the golf course, because that way you'll be sure you get the warning notifications if you are away as well. Does your town have a warning siren? Mine does not. And I don't know if the sirens are good or bad. I don't know, again, if people take them seriously. I think if I heard it, I would, just because the noise itself is really scary and you can't miss it. So I think sirens might be a good thing, but I think they should only be sounded for tornado warnings. Some communities sound them for severe thunderstorm warnings too, which you get a lot more frequently. Yes, those are also dangerous. Straight line winds can do just as much damage. But I feel like for tornadoes, that is going to be the worst of the worst. How about science teachers? Do they teach disaster preparedness as a part of the curriculum? I like going out to school visits and talking to children about disaster preparedness. I talk to children, I talk to adults. I've gone, gosh, all over the place just to educate people, because the more people you can reach, the better. And if their parents are not prepared, the kids will learn that information, they'll soak it up like a sponge, and they'll take it home and educate their parents, who then may educate their coworkers too. So the more you can do through events and social media is a big way to get that message out there. I do that a lot. If you are on social media, feel free to follow me at Cheryl Nelson TV. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over the place. And I'm always posting things about disaster prep and how people can be ready for storms. And you'll also see some other things on there too, like cats and stuff from my TV show. But hey, I like to be well-rounded, right? Have a little bit of everything. Next up, have a plan. Understand the warning system. We already talked about watches versus warnings. And what happens is the Storm Prediction Center will sometimes put out an outlook. So you'll kind of know in advance, okay, do we have a slight risk? Do we have a moderate risk or a high risk of storms? So just take a look at that. And that way you can kind of plan ahead for a few days and determine if you need to be on alert. When that watch is issued, that means, okay, we're set now. Eye to the sky, weather radio is on alert. If you have your warning that goes off, that means go. Take action. Go to your safe room immediately. One thing I like to do is program ICE, stands for in case of emergency, in my phone. Because let's say something happens, God forbid, and somebody gets a hold of my phone, they don't know who to call, they will check. Emergency responders know to check for ICE in your contacts. So if you want them to call a certain person, program ICE into your phone, put in that person's number, and that way they can phone or text them. Make sure everybody knows how to text as well. I know some of the older generations may not use texting, but if there's a disaster, a lot of the times phone calls will not go through because the system is swamped, and sometimes only text messages will go through. So make sure the adults, the kids, everybody knows how to text. Text versus call during and after a disaster. How many of you, ask yourself this, practice a disaster plan at work? I think a lot of workplaces need to be doing this. We have maps that show you where to go and where the exits are, but so many times when there's a tornado warning, for example, I don't see people moving. They sit at their desks, they keep doing their work, and they're going, I'm not worried about it. But no, if you're a manager, the manager should rally everybody up and go to that safe room, whether it be down the stairs in the basement or, gosh, out in the plain states or Midwest, you might have tornado shelters like you see there that are going underground. But you got to know where to go, and people shouldn't just sit around. I mean, I feel like a lot of us do that with even fire drills now. The fire alarm goes off. People think it's a drill, and they don't evacuate. So the time that it actually is an emergency, you want to make sure you're on the move. You don't just want to sit around. You have to know where to go and make sure everybody comes with you. Mitigate against severe weather. And this is something that obviously businesses should keep in mind. How are your windows? What is the code of the building? What is your roof like? Are you going to see shingles flying off if there's wind? How about leaks? Do you have a safe room? How strong is the structure that you are living or working in? You got to ask yourself all these questions and maybe talk to your manager about this too, and find out where that safest place is. Maybe at your workplace, it might be an interior bathroom. That may be where you want to go, or maybe it's a utility closet. But just make sure everybody is on the same page. So again, when it comes to talking and educating others, know the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. I like to tell people to duck, which means downstairs, under something, center of home, and keep away from windows. So a basement is best, like I said. Otherwise, you want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So bathrooms or closets are going to be your second best bet. Tornado safe rooms, depending on where you live, You might see a lot of these. Other places might not have them. You have to consider too where you are, if you're in a flood zone, what the soil is like. But you can build them below ground, outside, or even in your garage, or you can have them above ground as well. I don't know. I mean, the ones below ground, probably the safest. They creep me out a little bit just because if stuff falls on you, then you're kind of stuck there for a while. But when you do get one of these, your city and town, they know. There's a record of everybody who has one, so they know where your safe room is. They know where to find you if you are buried under rubble. Personally, I like the above ground ones, and there are many companies out there who build these shelters, and they make sure they are built to code as well, so they can withstand those winds. They're tested, and there's certainly something that's worth considering. Here is a myth. Anybody know why highway overpasses offer little protection from the winds of a tornado? This picture is a big no-no. You see all those cars just thinking, oh, I'm just going to chill under this overpass, wait for the storm to go by. No, you don't want to do that. There's no protection there because it actually almost acts like a wind tunnel. They become channeled under that. And if your cars are there, you're going to get sucked right up, and the winds will actually accelerate. So that is not a safe place to be by any means. By crawling up under an overpass, you're elevating yourself and you're exposing yourself to stronger winds. So what people ask is, okay, where do I go if I am caught? Let's say there's a hurricane spawning tornadoes and you're out and about, which you should not be. But if you are, you want to get to shelter. If there is no shelter available, and the only thing you have is your vehicle. There are two different ways you can look at this, and the community is kind of divided 50-50 on this. Some people say you should get out of the car, run away from anything that could become flying debris like trees or objects, and lay flat on the ground in a ditch. That's one option, but if it's flooding or there are other objects that could come around and hit you, you have virtually no other protection, but that makes you lowest to the ground. The other option would be to stay in your car, get down below your steering wheel and crouch there and cover your head. The car airbags might act as some protection, but that car is also higher up off the ground and could be tossed like a toy. So what we're telling people now is to use your best judgment. If you were ever caught in that situation, use your best judgment, and hopefully you'll be okay in that situation. Some ways to protect your business. There's a company called Stormblock, and this is an alternative to boarding up windows. It's actually a really cool system they use, and they have a warranty as well. And you can board up, or not board up, but basically protect windows from any kind of flying debris, save your windows, save your building. They can put your logo on it. And it's pretty cool to see. They actually use a pyramid shape, and they have a steel anchoring system with fiberglass frames, has a proprietary fabric cover, and you can deploy it quickly. You can also use it on signage, and drive-thrus use it as well. It's a pretty cool thing to see, and it's an alternative to boarding up your windows. If you live in a hurricane-prone area, this might be something that you want to look into or consider. It's real innovative, and it's nice to see companies out there considering other ways to protect their businesses. Preparing can also be fun, and I think these can make great gifts for the people in your life who maybe are not prepared or don't think a disaster will ever affect them. So I like to make it the latest trend, and you can buy some trendy preparedness items. One of them is this pretty bracelet, and it has a USB drive on it. What you can put on that, I think it'd be great to have. If you have medical problems, you can have medical information on that USB drive about yourself. You can have ID information for the elderly, for kids. That way, if you get separated, everything is right there. Also, inventory. If you want to put photos and inventory of your home or important documents, I mean, you can put anything you want on that drive and have it as a bracelet. So for example, if you know it's going to be a severe weather day, you could just wear that bracelet that day and you have everything right there on your wrist. NOAA weather radio, always a good gift. They have the crank power ones, the battery, solar power. There's so many different ones out there that you can get, and that's a great gift for people. And then for somebody who maybe likes to camp or be out in the elements, I love this Life Straw. It actually removes 99.9% of bacteria from water. And it's really cool because if somebody goes out and tries to get water from a stream, you put it through the Life Straw, and there you go. You have some clean water. These are all items that you could put in your preparedness kit, and they're fun and they're trendy. And that's what I'm trying to do, make preparedness a trend. If you are an organizer, you might like survival stores. And this is a great way to keep track of items in your home with this software. We always say you want to have water and food, at least 1 gallon per person for at least 3 days. 2 weeks is the recommended amount of water and food that you should have. But how many people go through their pantry or their kit and look at expiration dates? You might have peanut butter in there that expired 3 years ago, or granola bars. So this makes it easy. You keep track of everything you have in your kit, and you can put the expiration date in there on this software, and that way you know when to update it if you have not used it. Kind of cool. I love what the Red Cross is doing with the Disney Red Cross pillowcase project. This is something that kids can do at school or at home. You get a pillowcase from the American Red Cross, and it's got all the cool Disney characters on it. You can color it and paint it, whatever you want to do. And then you just, one by one, put disaster kit items in that pillowcase. So if money is an issue, maybe you could put 1 item in there per month. And over 12 months, you could build up your disaster kit. We can only do what we can only do. So if you can't go out and get your kit at once, that's totally understandable. Money does not grow on trees, I know that. But this is an easy way to do it, an easy way to budget and get the kids involved and make it fun. That wraps up Unit 2. Unit 3, now we're going to focus on asking yourself if you personally are really prepared. You may talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? So I want us all to be examples by preparing ourselves. Have that kit at home. Do you actually have a kit at home? I do. I've got the kit. It's in a backpack. It's ready to go. Whenever there's a tornado warning, I take it in my safe room with me, just so I have everything I need if I happen to get stuck there. I also have one in my vehicle. And that way, gosh, I mean, you could be stuck out and about if a storm comes up, if there are trees falling, if even in winter weather as well. You're stuck there. We saw in Atlanta from ice and snowstorms, people stuck on the roadways for 24 hours. It's easy to put something in your trunk. I love the Junk in the Trunk by Damsel in Defense. It's a nice emergency kit, has jumper cables, ice scrapers, all the other stuff, and then you can add some food and water to it too. But that way you know you're prepared. You always have something with you. And keep one at work. Have a little mini kit in your desk at the office. All right, let's talk about what to do before a hurricane. So let's say there's a storm and it's getting pretty close to your area. If you are not evacuating, you want to make sure you charge your cell phone well in advance. Try not to use it. You want to save that battery life as long as you can. Dim the brightness in your cell phone too. I know a lot of us always have it on auto or bright. So put it down to the lowest brightness setting. Go to the ATM before the storm. Get cash. And if you can, try to get change. You want cash in single dollar bills, at least $100 in single dollar bills. And that's because I learned this after Hurricane Katrina. I heard a story where an emergency manager went to buy a bottled water from a vendor, gave him $20, and the vendor said, "All right, thanks." No change. So he paid $20 for a bottle of water. So it's always good to have single dollar bills. Fill your gas tank well before the storm. Electricity is going to go out. You probably won't be able to get gas or use the ATM after that. And consider investing in a home standby generator or a portable generator, especially if you have special needs and you're dependent on electronic medical devices like oxygen. That's very important. And did you know that a power outage can cost you thousands of dollars? That's because of spoiled food, remediation costs, hotel stays, and used emergency supplies. So generators can really come in handy and save lives. So if you want a portable generator, I personally recommend a home standby generator by Cummins. That's my favorite. But if you do have a portable one, yes, they can power select electronics and appliances depending on the size for short-term outages. You got to fill them up with gasoline. You got to have gasoline and store it safely. You need wires and extension cords. And please, 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 if you have one, never run them inside. Do not run them in a garage, on your porch, on your deck. You got to put them a good distance away from your house because they release carbon monoxide and that can be deadly. When they run out of gas, if you don't have more gas, you're done. That's it, no more power. But it's better than nothing. So a home standby generator, I'm actually the weather and preparedness advisor and national spokesperson for Cummins standby generators. And so I really believe in this product. They actually connect to your home's natural gas line or propane tank. And what's great about it is it turns on automatically and it can power your entire house. You can actually program it to power just certain things in your house or your entire home, whatever you want to do. They are the safest type of generator. They don't require wires or gasoline or extension cords. And the best part is they stay on for the duration of the outage, providing peace of mind. So when everybody else in your neighborhood has a dark house, you're the house with all the lights on and probably all your neighbors coming over and you're going, no. So I do think the home standby generators are worth it. Yes, they are an investment, but down the line, if you've ever been without power for days, weeks, or longer, you understand the importance of them. One other thing to do is think about securing your home. And I think this is something we can all do now, actually. Now that the leaves are coming out and everything's on the trees, take a look at your trees. Do you have dead trees or dead branches? Are they hanging over the house? Do you need to have anything cut down? Do that now before the storm. Check out your roof as well. How about your windows? How are they doing? Do you have something to protect them? One thing that people don't think about, even during typical storms, you have lawn chairs, grills, trampolines, trash cans, everything outside, and nobody likes to secure them. And then you see them blowing down the street. So maybe get some bungee cords and just have those ready to go too. Clean out your gutters. You might have leaves or other gunk in there. Think about sandbags if you live in an area that might flood. And then if there is a hurricane that's going to be hitting your area, think about filling your bathtubs and sinks with water. Not necessarily for drinking, but for bathing and flushing the toilet. You want to make sure you drink bottled water, make sure that's completely sanitary. How many of you know your evacuation routes and what evacuation zone you are in? You can go to your individual state, county websites, find that out, see where your shelters are. Do you know where your shelter is? This is all stuff we should know now, and we should not be waiting until the last second to figure out, oh gosh, where do we go? Who goes first? Where can we stay? Just think about that. There's also a website called petswelcome.com, and they will tell you what hotels accept pets. Because many of us have pets, and we certainly never, never want to leave them behind. They are part of the family. They always come with us. Many of you may know this, basic disaster kit supplies, although the people I asked at the farmer's market only knew about water. So these are some basic items that you should have in your kit. I'm not going to read through all these. You guys can go down the list here, but I mean, food, obviously important, water, chargers for cell phones, personal documents, sanitation items, a paper map of the area. Don't rely on GPS. The cache we talked about. I have more information on the Natural Disaster Preparedness tab on my website at cherylnelson.net if you want to get more information on this. But this is something everybody should have. These are some add-ons that people may not think about. How about medications? How many of you always have a 2-week supply of medications? I know the pharmacy only gives us 30 pills at a time, and if you do the mail order, maybe you can get 90-day supply. But talk to your doctor about that. See what your options are, because obviously following a disaster, trucks are not going to be able to get in with these medications. And if you run out, you may not know when you can get a refill. So make sure you have at least a 2-week supply. For your pet, have their vet records, their proof of rabies vaccinations. Some shelters will not accept pets without proof of vaccination, so that's very important. Something that really has gained in popularity for tornado warnings is a helmet, like a bicycle helmet. If you have one, great. Go to your safe room, put it on to protect your head. Sturdy shoes. So many times during hurricanes, tornadoes, we're running around in flip-flops. Trust me, if there is a disaster and you're running around in debris and rubble, you don't want to be in flip-flops. Have boots, some sturdy shoes, something in your kit ready to go. Have your home inventory. Take pictures, important documents, insurance, license, anything you need for identification purposes. Because if your house is destroyed, God forbid, and you don't have your license, how are you going to identify yourself? Have all of that on a flash drive or CD. You can put it on a bracelet. And I like this, give a copy to a family member. That way somebody else has it in case you lose yours. Hand warmers are something people don't think about, especially in colder weather or those cold nights where you don't have heat. And again, the flood insurance with the 30-day wait period. And these are a few of my cats. I have 4. I know, I'm the crazy cat lady. But I'm showing this because you want to have a picture of you and your pet together, like I have with my black cat right there, because that can also help prove ownership. Of course, it's best to have your pet microchipped, which I do, and have a collar. The breakaway collars, please, because that way if they get snagged on something, they will come off. I always use breakaway collars. And keep that in your kit too, because if somebody finds your pet, you don't want to get in a fight with somebody saying, no, that's my cat. You go, no, this is mine, and you have every way possible to prove it. And remember, take them with you. Have everything you need for them. Make sure they have their kit. Make sure you have carriers and leashes for all your pets as well. If you're out of town, make sure you have somebody who can go and check on your pets. If there's a disaster or a tornado while you're at work, make sure a neighbor or somebody you can trust can check on your animals. So, yeah, it could happen tomorrow. And hurricanes are dangerous, tornadoes, hurricanes can spawn tornadoes. This is actually a picture from my area in Hampton Roads, Virginia, in Suffolk from 2008, from an EF3 tornado. Those are not common around here. And it leveled 2-story colonial homes to their foundations. Devastating. Amazingly, nobody was killed. It happened during the work and school day. And thankfully, nobody was in these homes. But had it occurred at a different hour, I hate to think of what would have happened. So just because you don't live in quote-unquote Tornado Alley does not mean you won't see a tornado. Or just because you're not on the coast doesn't mean you will not be impacted by the flooding rains of inland flooding from hurricanes. So again, ask yourself, where would you and your family meet if you were all to be separated? And remember, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Don't be caught unprepared. Your life could depend on it, and the life of your spouse, mother, father, kids, family members, friends. You want to make sure everybody is being safe. And these are just some pictures from Hurricane Irma from 2017, showing the devastation across the islands and also in the Keys in Florida. One storm can turn your area into something that looks like a war zone. And it's scary, but it's real life and it can happen. So that wraps up my presentation. I really appreciate you joining this webinar. If you have questions, you can also research my website. Visit me there at cherylnelson.net. There I am on social media at Cheryl Nelson TV, or you can shoot me an email, cherylbnelson27@gmail.com. And I hope that you've learned something today, and I really appreciate Safe and Ready for hosting this webinar, and I hope that you can take this information back to your family and friends.